On a rain-slicked city street at 3 in the morning, the same man stands beneath the same flickering neon sign. In one frame, he turns left coat collar up, hurrying toward the warm glow of home and the family waiting behind the door. In the very same instant, in the mirrored frame beside him, he turns right, disappearing into the mouth of an alley where music pulses and strangers beckon with promises that have no tomorrow. 2 paths, 2 selves, 1 heartbeat. The screen splits, then snaps together. A single question lingers in the darkness after the image fades. What if every human being carries a twin inside the chest, one woven of light, the other stitched from shadow? And the refusal to acknowledge the second one is the deepest loneliness we ever know. This is not an abstract philosophical fancy. From the marble temples of the Mediterranean to the red earth compounds of southwestern Nigeria, from the high desert canyons of the Diné to the consulting rooms of 20th-century Europe, the same motif returns with stubborn persistence: twins, who are never quite identical twins, who must remain bound together if either is to survive. Castor and Pollux ascending as Gemini. The Yoruba ibeji cradling joy and danger in the same carved embrace. Monster slayer and born for water, walking side by side against the monsters that devour the world. These are not random coincidences scattered across continents that never touched. They are mirrors held up to the same divided human soul. Look closely, and the pattern sharpens. Wherever a culture confronts the terror of imbalance, too much chaos, too much rigidity, too much grief, too much pride, it births stories of twins. One may be mortal, the other immortal, one fierce, the other gentle, one dead, the other living. Yet the stories refuse to let them separate for long. The hidden power promised in every version is never the triumph of light over darkness or darkness over light. The power arrives only when the twins agree to share the same sky. Tonight, that ancient pattern collides with the present. Modern life streams in high definition across billions of screens, each feed carefully curated to display only the sunlit self. Smiles are mandatory, vulnerability is branded weakness, anger is medicated away, desire is shamed into silence. We have become skilled exterminators of our own shadows. Yet the exile never holds. The rejected twin returns wearing different masks: burnout addiction, sudden rage, inexplicable despair. The documentary you are about to experience asks a deceptively simple question. What happens if, instead of banishing the shadow, we invite it to walk beside us in the open across separate continents and millennia? 3 traditions kept the twin fires burning. Their stories are not forensic records. They are sacred maps drawn by people who understood that a human being is never singular. Begin with the Greeks, who placed the Dioskuroi in the heavens, where sailors still look for their twin stars in storm. Castor and Pollux shared a mother Leda, but not a father. Castor was sired by Tyndareus, king of Sparta, and therefore mortal. Pollux was son of Zeus himself, born to live forever. When Castor fell in battle, pierced by a spear that no divine blood could turn aside, Pollux stood over the body of his brother and refused the gift of eternity alone. He begged Zeus to let him share his immortality, even if only by halves. The king of gods granted the plea. From that day forward, the twins would spend alternate days in the brilliance of Olympus and the silence of Hades, bound together forever in the constellation Gemini. Mortality and immortality ceased to be opposites. They became alternating breaths of the same life. Cross the Atlantic centuries before any European ship arrived, and find the same insistence in the Yoruba country of what is now southwestern Nigeria and Benin. Here, the birth of twins occurs far more often than anywhere else on Earth, roughly 45 sets for every 1,000 births against a global average closer to 12. To the Yoruba, this was never mere biology. It was a visitation. Twins ibeji were children of Shango, the thunder Orisha, whose double-headed axe already announced the power of duality. When twins arrived, communities celebrated with drumming and palm wine. For abundance was sure to follow. Yet danger walked in the same cradle. If one twin died, and infant mortality claimed many, the surviving child was believed to carry a restless spirit that could bring misfortune unless properly honored. Mothers commissioned master carvers to create ibeji, small wooden figures dressed in beads and cloth-fed, sung to, carried on the hip, exactly as the living twin had been carried. The dead child was not abandoned. The bond was preserved in wood and ritual so that joy and grief might continue their eternal dance without tipping into ruin. Far to the north and west in the canyon country of the American Southwest, the Navajo relate the deeds of the hero twins born to changing woman when the world was still young and monsters walked the earth. The elder monster slayer came into being ready for war, his mind fixed on destruction of every threat to the people. The younger, born for water, arrived with a calmer spirit attuned to cycles and renewal. Their father was the sun, yet they needed each other desperately. When they set out to rid the world of the rock monsters, the water monsters, the flying horrors that devoured whole villages, neither could have prevailed alone. Monster Slayer charged ahead with obsidian blades flashing. Born for Water followed, reading the land, finding the hidden weakness in every enemy. Together, they made the world safe. For the dying to emerge as human beings, separate them and the monsters would have returned before the next sunrise. 3 traditions, 3 pairs of twins, 3 refusals to let opposites drift apart. The Greek story binds mortality to divinity. The Yoruba story binds living child to departed spirit. The Navajo story binds righteous violence to restorative wisdom. In each case, the community survives only because the twins remain intertwined. The same insistence appears in symbolic systems that never personified the forces as twins, yet still demanded their coexistence. In ancient China, the circling yin and yang were never enemies. Each carried a seed of the other, black dot and white dot in black, an eternal reminder that completion requires both. In Persia, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu contended across cosmic ages, yet some Zoroastrian priests taught that the final restoration would come not through annihilation of darkness, but through its purification and return to the light. Even the starkest religious dualisms often contained hidden clauses of reconciliation. Then came the 20th century, and a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung looked into the human soul and saw the old twin myth staring back at him. Jung argued that every personality is split from the beginning. The part we present to the world, he called the persona polished, socially acceptable, bathed in light. The part we push away, he named the shadow, everything raw, shameful, violent, needy, or simply inconvenient. The more ruthlessly the persona denies the shadow, Jung observed, the denser and more dangerous the shadow becomes. It leaks out sideways as sarcasm, addiction, sudden cruelty, or the inexplicable hatred we feel for people who display the very traits we have buried in ourselves. Projection, he called it. We see our own rejected twins walking around in other people, and we attack them to keep the coffin nailed shut. Modern culture has turned the suppression of shadow into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Social media rewards the flawless persona. Workplaces demand relentless optimism. Self-help gurus promise that toxic feelings can be vibrated away if we simply repeat the right affirmations. Yet, the data arriving from clinics and divorce courts and psychiatric wards tell another story. Anxiety disorders have climbed steadily for decades. Burnout has become the background hum of professional life. Rates of explosive rage incidents rise in direct proportion to the cultural insistence that anger must never be felt, let alone expressed. The exiled twin does not vanish. It grows fangs in the dark. But the old stories never counseled annihilation. They counseled relationship. Return to the myths with this psychological lens, and the deeper pattern snaps into focus. Castor and Pollux do not reach their final glory when one defeats the other. They ascend only when immortality is shared and mortality is honored in the same constellation. Yoruba families do not prosper by pretending the dead twin never existed. They thrive by feeding the carved figure at every meal, keeping the conversation alive between life and death. The hero twins do not cleanse the world by silencing the voice of caution or the voice of fury. They win because each listens to the other at the precise moment when listening is hardest. Integration is the word psychology borrowed from alchemy, where base metals were not destroyed but married to produce gold. The process is rarely gentle. The first glimpse of the shadow twin usually arrives as humiliation, catching oneself in a lie. Feeling a surge of envy so vicious, it startles realizing that the moral high ground was built on quicksand. Yet, patients who stay with the discomfort report something strange. The anger that once erupted without warning begins to announce itself in advance. giving a split second to choose words instead of fists. The envy that poisoned friendships becomes a signal of unmet ambition that can finally be named. The fear of weakness once buried under bravado softens into vulnerability that invites genuine closeness instead of armored isolation. Picture a man in his 40s, successful on paper, hollow inside, who has spent decades being the reliable one, the good son, the calm colleague, the father, who never raises his voice. Beneath the surface, resentment festers like an abscess. He wakes at 3 a.m, clenched with rage he cannot explain. Therapy, or sometimes simply the courage to write the unsayable in a private journal, brings the shadow twin into the room. At first, the recognition is terrifying. I'm capable of hatred. I want more than I admit. I'm tired of being good. But as the weeks pass, something shifts. He begins to set boundaries that once felt selfish. He asks for the promotion he secretly believed he did not deserve. He tells his spouse the truths he once swallowed to keep the peace. The rage does not disappear. He is finally given a job protecting the life he actually wants, instead of sabotaging the life he pretended to want. This is the hidden power the title speaks of. Not the triumph of light over darkness, but the moment when light and darkness agree to carry the same shield. Reframe the inner battle and the entire landscape changes. What felt like civil war becomes unfinished conversation. The light needs the shadow's depth, its fierce honesty, its refusal to settle for half-truths. The shadow needs the light's direction, its moral compass, its ability to build instead of merely destroy. Neither side is promoted to dictator. Both are invited to the table. The motif refuses to die because the problem refuses to die. Contemporary stories still split characters down the middle. Bruce Wayne and Batman Walter White, and Heisenberg Elsa and her frozen heart, because we recognize ourselves in the fracture. Musicians step on stage as alter egos who say and do what the daylight self never dares. Every viral rant, every canceled celebrity, every public meltdown is the shadow twin ripping off the mask and demanding to be seen. Yet, the oldest maps are still the clearest. Honor both. Feed both. Let neither walk alone. Begin simply. Notice when the body tightens with feelings labeled unacceptable. Write them down without censorship. Speak them aloud to someone who will not flinch. Create paint dance drum right, so that the unspeakable finds form outside the skin. Cultures around the world have offered rituals for this work. For millennia, the Yoruba mother, dancing with a carved ibeji on her hip, the Navajo singer tracing the path of the hero twins in sand paintings that will be swept away at dusk, the Greek sailor pouring wine to the Dioskuroi before the storm hits. The details differ. The direction is identical. Keep the conversation open between the two who share your name. On the same rain-slicked street where we began, the split screen dissolves. One man walks forward now, neither hurrying toward false comfort nor vanishing into reckless escape. Sunlight strikes the left side of his face. Deep shadow pools on the right. Both illume the same determined eyes. He does not stride in perfect balance. Some steps favor light. Others lean into darkness, but the twins have agreed on a direction. The hidden power of duality is not serenity without struggle. It is wholeness that can carry contradiction without shattering. Somewhere inside, every viewer sits a second self, waiting to be recognized, not as enemy, not as flaw, but as the missing half of the constellation that has always borne your name. Listen, the conversation is already beginning.